current role is I am a senior game producer at Meta, actually now Oculus Studios. We just rebranded ourselves a couple weeks ago. I am originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Went to a school called Hawken in Gates Mills. Graduated from Hawken and went to the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor, where I studied electrical engineering and got my bachelor's in science. Joined Microsoft full-time after a long stream of internships. Microsoft had asked me what I wanted to do, what would it take to get me to move to Seattle and join the company full-time. I told them I want to work in games, and they said, okay. So that was a huge moment for me. I shipped a wide variety of software titles for the Xbox 360, Windows Phone, PC, worked in Amazon Detroit for a while. We moved back to Detroit in order to get get closer to home, closer to family. So spent a lot of time there. Did quite a bit of work on machine learning for about 4 or 5 years. So I actually find kind of the current panic about machine learning to actually be hilarious, given that it's not something that's new. So, and someone is mentioning the background. That is an actual. So one of the things we did at Microsoft is every time when I was an Xbox third party, is every time we worked with a game company, we would try to get any statues that they would build for marketing. So that's the Big Daddy from the BioShock series. We had Star Killer. We had Sonic the Hedgehog. So our offices were kind of this museum of video game full life-size video game characters, which was always pretty cool. So the one thing that I'll say with my conversations here is, a lot of people don't get a chance to interface with gaming professionals, and I always try to make this interactive. So I have slides, and I will talk for an hour, but it's more, I'm also keeping an eye on the comment section. So if people have got questions, please don't hesitate to ask them. I will answer them in real time. It's better for me if this is an interactive experience for you guys so that you guys can maximize. The other thing is at the end of the presentation, I will give you my contact information. So if you've got questions about the industry or technology, call me, email me, I'll answer. And it's something that I always do. It's something that I find that students rarely actually take me up on. So it's something that I'm always able to offer it out there. So, prove me wrong in that case. So let's see, just gonna go ahead and move a slide here. So I'm a very avid gamer. These are from my gamer tags and handles. I use LTrain a lot. That is a handle that goes back from college. A senior director at Microsoft kind of gave me that name in undergraduate. I asked him, why do you call me LTrain? And he says, well, LTrain, it just fits. So that's in that was in 1994. Hassan, there's a slide at the end with all of my contact information, so you'll have it then. So Detroit Robotics, we kind of talked a little bit about this. This is something that I got into about 5 years ago, recognizing that there was a need in Detroit in particular, where we had lots of robotics going on, but the teams weren't doing well. Michigan is probably the most difficult region for FIRST Robotics in the world in terms of number of teams. We have more robotics teams than football teams here. So I wasn't seeing Detroit doing very well. So I decided to step in first as a coach. I've coached all 3 levels of robotics, and then ultimately creating a nonprofit called the Motor City Alliance that basically works with 100 teams in the Detroit area to improve robotics. And we've seen massive gains over the years. But on a personal level, as said, my team was the first team from Detroit to ever qualify for the World Championship in Houston, Texas. And I was runner-up for the Compass Award, which is the award basically for outstanding inspirational coach. So it basically makes me the number 2 coach of the world in terms of thousands of coaches, which is pretty fun. So now I work on virtual and augmented reality. This is something that you're going to be seeing a lot more of lately. I've got my Quest Pro here, We just announced the Quest 3 this week. Apple has a rumored virtual reality headset. So we're really kind of this renaissance of what we're seeing is virtual, augmented, and mixed reality at this point. So Elisha has a point: is VR more popular than normal console games or phone games? Not even close. Console games are orders of magnitude more popular, and phone games are even bigger than that. So at this point, so in comparison, these games and this adoption is very small. But we see this as the beginning. Hey, phone games weren't very popular 15 years ago, and now it's absolutely nuts. So interesting question: Quest or HoloLens? So I'm gonna go with my employer, who pays the bills. I do have a HoloLens, and I had HoloLens for a while, but this product has been discontinued. So Microsoft no longer makes the HoloLens and has backed away from it for some time. They're also very different products. So this is a VR headset, right? So this it's got shields on the side so that you can have a immersive experience. We also now have what we're doing, what's called mixed reality, where we're using the cameras to actually show you what's in your environment. And we're using AI of augmented reality, because there's a huge problem with augmented reality, and that's horsepower. So one of the problems with this is it's freaking huge. Like, nobody wants to wear this on their head, right? Like, this is heavy. You look like a dork unless you're doing something, kind of very specific. So for augmented reality to actually take off and be successful, and this is something that we are working on. Like, I was hired to work on augmented reality at Meta, is it needs to be the size and weight of eyeglasses. This technology has to become invisible. And that's the only way AR is ever going to catch on. But the thing is, as you start getting technology that's this small and this thin, then your graphical horsepower starts dropping. So the reason why HoloLens is so big is because all of the compute power has to sit here on your head. There's another technology called Magic Leap that tries to have like a hockey puck that you wear, and the processing is sitting on your belt. I think that's a good solution, particularly if you can make that wireless, but then you have power constraints. So what we're seeing is, what we're using now is we're using mixed reality as this bridge, because we're still 5 to 6 years away from invisible augmented reality that everybody will have in their eyeglasses. And once that hits, then this will replace your cell phone, right? And this is like everything you do, will just be projected on your glasses or your sunglasses. And then there's some really exciting things that you can do. Example, I was just reading in a book called Brain Rules about a neurological condition that prevents people from recognizing faces. There's a small 0.03% of the population that has no neurological ability to actually tell people apart. So they meet their family for the first time every single day until they say, hey, I'm Bob, or I'm Sue, or I'm Leon, and they know who that person is. Well, augmented reality glasses could project that data of who that person is right into their view frame, and that would actually change a lot of social affordances and make life easy for them. So there's some really, really interesting transformation of technologies, and it also applies to other neurological issues like Alzheimer's, etc. But games. Actually, anything else here? Just kind of again noting very much on the bleeding edge of technology. Sony's doing a lot more with VR. You'll see a lot more adoption. Apple is hinting at a VR headset this year. I'm sure it'll be fabulous, and it'll be $8 million. So Google Glass and lenses can do some of that, but suffer from the same horsepower and power constraints that I was kind of referring to. The other thing is Google Glass has a really, really tiny kind of projection, and the kind of the holy grail is that your entire eyeglass lens, without any kind of like screen covering it, would be able to project that. So we're a few years away from being able to do that well. But that's what we are working on as a company. Like that is the moonshot. So a lot of times you'll hear about Meta. We talk about the metaverse, and particularly the media thinks that the metaverse is something that's coming out next week. No, the metaverse is a moonshot. The metaverse is how we will be using technology, 10 to 20 years from now. Much in the same way we talk about the three screens, right? The three screens being your television, your cell phone, and your tablet, or your television, your laptop, and your tablet / cell phone, right? So we see VR AR as being the fourth screen. All right, so for me, video games. So I love games, right? So I have had the advantage of I have tied my career to something that I love, and if you can do that in life, it makes it a lot easier to get up in the morning, right? Because I'm not slaving away on something that I don't enjoy. I'm slaving on something I'm working on something that's extremely exciting and powerful for me. So in the course of my life, I've watched games go from actually a lot less primitive, a lot more primitive than this, but kind of early Mario brother interactions from the 80s on that top row. And these are all sprite based, right? All the way to kind of, this is what Mario looks like now, fully rendered 3D character. I've not seen the Mario movie yet. It is on video now, and my son and I are going to go watch it. But we are actually going to go see Spider-Man next. So once we see Spider-Verse, we'll definitely kind of circle back and take care of Mario. I'm excited. I like Jack Black. I think Jack Black and Bowser is hilarious. So no spoilers, please. But yeah, being able to watch this technology through my life has just been, incredibly exciting. Particularly, at an age when I was younger, all game consoles were Japanese, right? The only consoles that you had, and I shouldn't say that, the Atari and the Odyssey, which are probably names you guys have never heard of, those were kind of U.S. driven consoles until the Sony and Sega and Nintendo basically took over everything. And then a little bit after that, we came in with Xbox, and I got a chance to be on that Xbox team, and that was really exciting to be a part of that. So I want to talk about case studies, and my first case study here is Combat. So Combat is a game from the 80s. It is a tank game for the Atari 2600 system, and it's one of the first. A game like this is one of the first video games that I ever wrote. And it didn't even look this good, right? I had a red box. It was the red tank, and a blue box that was the blue tank. And it fought back. Oh yes, we have an Atari 2600 player here. Excellent, Talib. That's fantastic. So, but yeah, this was a big deal, right? One of the very first multiplayer games. Sure, it was two people on the screen. By today's graphics, your iWatch literally has more graphics horsepower than that poor little this poor little 2600. But the reason why I want to bring this up is it was a cool place to start. And actually, building a tank game is something that I still suggest because it's a really easy game to design. But now with modern tools such as the Unity game engine, you can basically buy assets for $1, and you can make games that look like this, right? So this is an asset from the Unity asset store. I think it's $10, and it's fairly easy to implement and animate these tanks. So you can have something that looks like a AAA title. So this is really important for those of you that are technical, that maybe don't have an artist handy. For those of you that play games, one of the things that I suggest is watch the in-game credits very carefully, and you'll see that there are more artists than engineers on modern games, because just the amount of artists it takes to make these game assets is absolutely massive. So being able to go to something like Unity, now you couldn't sell this game and pretend like these assets are yours, but just kind of declare, hey, I bought these assets from X course, and you can get a real shot in the arm in terms of game development. So really cool that there are tools that are available to us that weren't. And like I said, I had the blue square that said tank and the red square that said tank. So here's a partial portfolio of some of the games that I've worked on. Fight Night, Left 4 Dead. Mass Effect was recently re-released, so I was the producer on that game. That was by far the most successful game that I ever worked on. Really, really cool. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, so being able to make work on a great sci-fi story like Mass Effect is fantastic. Asheron's Call was an early massively multiplayer game. So those of you that played Destiny or those of you that played World of Warcraft, this was one of the first games in that space, along with a game called EverQuest. Age of Empires just re-released as well. I worked on both of those like right out of college, so that was fun. Motocross Madness. That one of my favorite things in Motocross Madness is sitting in a room and listening to engine sounds for 2 hours and just like bored out of my mind because I was the network programmer and I didn't care what the two-stroke engine sounded like, but that stuff is important. Combat Flight Simulators is really fun. Microsoft is just started making Flight Sim again, but Flight Simulator is an institution for Microsoft in terms of games, but it's an actual simulator. So the idea was to actually add the combat to it and make things a lot more fun. So that was cool. One of the things that I helped some people work on was a Tuskegee Airmen pack for that, to actually bring the Tuskegee Airmen Mustangs with the red tails into the game. So that was actually really, really cool that we were able to help out with that. So yeah, I see some people playing Age of Empires. So my name's actually in the Age credits. So if they go to the credits, they'll see those. So right out of college, I worked on the MSN Gaming Zone. It was initially called the Internet Gaming Zone, and this was a collection of card and board games at first, and eventually it became a way for PC games, when PC gaming was kind of the only way to do multiplayer at the time, to actually match make. So I worked with a lot of games like game companies like LucasArts to put the pod racing game online. Eventually, most of these card and board games just ended up in Windows. So at one point when Windows XP and Windows 7, I think were the last ones that shipped with all this stuff, I had a game in every single copy of Windows on the planet. So that was kind of cool. Hearts was a big one, online Hearts and online Bridge. So really great experience working on the Zone. And then I got to get my start on the retail stuff. And Age of Empires used this system initially for gaming. But lessons learned here. So one of the things I want to do here is just give you guys some insight into some lessons that I learned along the way. So Bridge was, we built this online Bridge game, and online Bridge, they hired a guy to build the game who was Fred Gittleman. He's like one of the foremost Bridge players in the world, and he kind of dabbles in C, and he took a stab at it, and it was the worst code I've ever seen in my life. And they actually I had to come in and fix it. So I came in and I fixed the game, and I got it working, and I got it running, and I got all the bugs fixed. And it was this beautiful game, and it was laid out really beautifully. And we used to do what was called play testing. So we would bring in our demographics, which were seniors, were the main ones that were playing this game. And they all were playing the game on a much lower resolution. So when they came in to do the play testing, everything was tiny. The buttons were tiny, the cards were tiny, and they couldn't see it. So I had to sit behind this one-way mirror and just struggle. It was just painful just watching customer after customer who couldn't play the game correctly. So the lesson I learned is know your customer, because sometimes the customer ain't you. And this has nothing to do with games, right? This is absolutely universal. Know who your product is aimed at. And if your demographic for your game is people 60 plus, then you better be sure to have a mode that handles aging eyesight. So we had to rebuild all that, and it was great. And ultimately ended up being a huge success for Microsoft. But as someone in my 20s, that was a great lesson to learn, and a hard lesson, because I was proud of what I had, and I was a little bit arrogant. And it was good to get that shot in my complacency. So Microsoft Game Studios worked on a ton of games here. Mass Effect. We built a lot of the foundational technology behind Xbox Live. Worked on some games that didn't do well. Worked on a game called Vanguard Saga of Heroes from the creator of EverQuest, which was an absolute management disaster with the partner that we had. And I ultimately recommend that we, first I recommended that we take over the development work, but ultimately recommended that we sell the rights to Sony just because the partner was too difficult to manage. They always gave me the really hard companies like that. I worked in a team called Game Tech, where we built this foundational technology. So the original Xbox didn't have the ability to draw text. You had to draw text yourself. So we built a mechanism, what's called a library, that allowed teams to actually draw text. And it went into NFL Fever, which was a football game, one of the very first football games in the Xbox platform, and a very good one at that. And it used there. So, but we really shortened the development time, because if everybody had to do that themselves, it would have taken them another month or two to get that working. We built all of the foundational technologies for Xbox Live. We built something that's called XNA, which basically allowed you to build your game on your PC and then hit a button and then rebuild the game for Xbox. At the time, we didn't have a whole lot of, when game consoles launch, you don't have a whole lot of what are called development kits, the hardware. They're rare. So great question, Simon. What do we mean by drawing text? So if you have a 3D game, the only thing that the game engine does is render triangles, right? So it is literally rendering. Now, in the case of this Mad Cat mech on the screen, right? This is composed of hundreds of thousands of triangles, right? So you draw this in a 3D program and bring it over, but then how do you draw text? So you would have to, each developer would have to write a program that would allow them to take the football score, like Cleveland Browns, right, and actually display Cleveland Browns on screen by taking letters in the English language and converting them into triangles. So now this stuff is all included in the Xbox and all the systems. It's all built in. But we were coming in so hot with the original Xbox because we were desperate to beat Sony out the door with the console that it just wasn't there. So it was left up to the teams to do that work. So we took that work on for behalf of all of MGS, Microsoft Game Studios. Now it's just built into the console, and no one worries about it. But like I said, that first version of the Xbox, it was coming in hot, and that's normal, right? Game console launches, like, so for you gamers out there, here's a piece of advice. When a game console launches, most of the games are terrible, and they're always going to be terrible because they're running up against a hard date, right? This game console's got to ship by November, and the console can't ship without games, right? So that means that some games are going to get pushed out the door before they're completely ready because there have to be games on the shelf. So typically what happens, there's one really good game that's been in development for a while, or maybe got all the resources, or maybe, they threw everyone and their mother at it to get it done. Examples of that are like Halo. That always happens with Halo with an Xbox launch, right? Halo looks good, and you get other games that are like, not so much, right? So that's why console game launches are really kind of underwhelming because most of those titles are rushed out the door. And this is a tradition. It's not limited to Microsoft. It's not limited to Sony. It's not limited to anyone. Usually the best games for a console come out 1 to 2 years after it's actually launched. Cyberpunk rushed out the door for a different reason. They were trying to meet holiday because the company was running out of money, and they rushed that game out the door. The lower end consoles, which probably too much game for the original kind of PlayStation 4 and that generation Xbox. But the reality was there were tens of millions of customers on those consoles versus very few on the PS5 because no one could buy them. So it's at the end of the day, developers have to eat, and sometimes we have to make some tough decisions to get things out the door. Vanguard talked about a little bit. Spiritual successor to EverQuest. Just we did a lot of hard work for it, but really difficult developer didn't do too well. Mass Effect, great game, but there was a difficult developer here who did not trust us, who didn't like us. One of the great stories of Mass Effect is we actually had design staff at Microsoft. So let me back up here. A lot of games are built in what's called the publisher model, right? So there is a publisher who bankrolls the project, in this case, Microsoft, and I was the producer, the project manager for the publisher. And then there's the game developer, and they're kind of like, they're doing the work, right? So it's a relationship kind of in between the two. And sometimes that relationship can get very contentious. So think of it as like a contractor, right? Like you're putting in a new bathroom in your house and you hire a contractor to do that work because presumably the contractor has expertise in doing that. So in the case of Mass Effect, BioWare was very distrustful of us. And we actually wrote a really long design document that was designed to really address a lot of the problems with the original Mass Effect. They had a lot, for as an example, they had a lot of mechanics in there for like elemental damage that no one really cared about. So we're like, just take it out, do all these other things, and then they took that document and threw it away. And then when Mass Effect 2 came out, someone actually went back and looked at the document and was like, oh my God, this was great. So when Mass Effect 2 came out, we noticed that it was all of our feedback composed Mass Effect 2. And the people that ran the company actually came back and apologized to me. They were like, we were jerks to you guys, and you guys were really trying to help us. As a side note, that company was called BioWare. The reason why it was called BioWare is because it was founded by two doctors, and they were referred to as the doctors. That company was purchased by Electronic Arts, and now EA. They're no longer an independent company. As for how many people can work on a game at once, it just depends on the side of the game. If it's a small game like a mobile game, then 4 or 5, right? There's hundreds of people that work on Destiny, right? There's hundreds of people that work on a Final Fantasy game. Again, watch those credits, right? And sometimes those credits stream for a long time. So you do run into something called the Mythical Man Month, which is that you don't want too many people working on something, because then you'll get so many people, they actually start getting in each other's way. One of the ways we kind of explain the Mythical Man Month to people is that 9 women can't make a baby in a month, right? Like you just can't throw people at the problem and get that baby out faster. It's still going to take 9 months. It doesn't matter how many people you assign to get that project done. So Mass Effect. One thing is cool. I go to Comic-Con a lot. It's always cool, like when I'm at Comic-Con and I see people dressed up as characters from the game, the games that I play. Like a bunch of friends and I, we all work in games. It's like our favorite thing is to run around and get photos with folks who, for games that we worked on for 2-3 years, and they just basically, the way people adopt it and get excited about it is always fun. Social implications of game are interesting. So Mass Effect had a kind of a romance scene that you could get to if you went down certain paths. And there was a news article on Fox News about how awful it was, and we were destroying people's minds, and it really wasn't that big of a deal. And somebody asked the person who was complaining about it, well, did you ever play the game? And she said, no, I haven't played the game. So then all the gamers went on to Amazon and bombed her book reviews, basically saying, well, I haven't read her book, but that doesn't stop her. She later issued a retraction. So just interesting that you have those things that happen. Like gaming has gotten bigger and bigger, and the social implications of gaming have been kind of wide. So just checking the things here. Yes. If you're hungry, please go grab a snack. Go order DoorDash. That's what I do for when I'm not presenting in online meetings. But One of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about was Angry Birds, and this isn't so old that some of you should at least recognize Angry Birds or the sequel. And the reason why I'm indicating this is that you might not be thinking about it, but a lot of what you're learning in school is actually applied to gaming and game development. And what I mean by that is that Angry Birds is a physics simulation, right? At any given point, the bird has got a velocity vector. It's being pulled down by gravity at 9.8 meters per second squared. There's different materials with different density, right? The ice breaks very easily. The stone doesn't. The bigger the bird, the bigger the momentum. So everything that you're learning in your physics classes actually applies to game development. And when these things are wrong, your brain isn't happy, right? Like if you saw something that didn't feel quite right, the physics were off, you'd complain about it. So the point being is that a lot of people think that game development is just purely for coding, and it's not. We need a wide variety of people to do this stuff. Like somebody asked how many people are working on a game. So we need people that understand physics. We need people that can do the graphics. We need musicians to write background music. We need writers to write stories and storylines and having those interactions in place. So there's a wide list. So again, you're talking about those hundreds of people that work on it. You need business people to crunch the numbers to make sure that you're funded. So you can have a passion for games, and even if you are not, if you don't have a technical acumen, there's still more than enough room at the table for you to eat, because we need a long, wide variety of skills to make this happen. Next interesting job for me was I worked in Xbox third party. So this is interesting because I was doing business development for Xbox. And I did business development for Xbox, and I skipped getting an expensive master's of business. So this was a much cheaper way of achieving that. So I got to work with companies like Electronic Arts and Lucasfilm, Disney, about bringing their products to Xbox at the time. So one interesting kind of application of that kind of tales from the front was the lightsaber. So the Xbox avatars, which are more common now, just gonna ask, you still need a storyline for an RPG? Typically, yeah, a story for a role-playing game, unless it is a massively multiplayer game where that is less of an issue. Typically, it's kind of a defining characteristic of an RPG. But there are kind of dungeon crawler light games that are a lot like an RPG. Like look at the Souls games, right? Where there is less of a story. It's more of just you getting beat up over and over and over again while you're trying to beat really hard bosses. So for the most part, yes, but not in all cases, to answer your question. The lightsaber. So avatars are more popular now. Meta has avatars on all their apps. The Xbox Live avatars have been around for a while. And at the time, the Xbox team was not allowing avatars to have weapons in the online store. They could have weights, they could have skateboards, they could have cameras, but no weapons. So all of our game developers were like, we have iconic weapons in our game and you won't let us sell those. So as doing business development, I took this on for LucasArts, now Disney. And I made the argument that, so the ad above was a Walt Disney ad where kids were waiting in line to meet Luke Skywalker, and you had Darth Vader in the line with the ignited lightsaber. And my point was, if the lightsaber is good enough for Disney, are you telling me that your brand is more sacrosanct than Star Wars? And that got it done. So the lightsaber ended up launching on the store and quickly became the best-selling item on the store. Lucas was so grateful. They actually sent me a lightsaber, which I got somewhere around here on my wall and stuff behind me. And then everyone in the company signed the box. So that was pretty exciting effect that I was able to have. As for the schedule, there is another kind of meet and greet after this, and then there is another session after that where I'm going to actually be talking about the specifics of how to use gaming tools if you decide to participate and make a game in terms of the hackathon. So the other thing I got to do is I got to work with tech, the Connect sensor, kind of groundbreaking infrared sensor. It was exciting as a technology. I think it was not as well received as it could have been. One of the interesting things about Connect, somebody had asked about the HoloLens. Connect and HoloLens use the same technology. So what Connect does is it bathes. If you're ever around a Connect, if you put on a pair of night vision goggles, I have a pair that shipped with Call of Duty. So, if you bought X version of Call of Duty, you would get these really cheap night vision goggles, and you could put them on and you could see what Connect was doing was bathing everything in little infrared dots. So you would see this grid, and it was basically measuring as your hand or your body moved in that grid, it could figure out the shape of your body. Connect is the same thing, except for the infrared sensors are on the bar, and that's actually how it's detecting your hands. And the engineer who invented Connect is the engineer behind HoloLens. So that's why those technologies are very similar. So I worked with a lot of partners. I worked in a great game called Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. I was the reason those games were Xbox exclusives, so I negotiated that. But just fighting for our customers and enabling their ideas on the Xbox platform was really cool and gave me a really different sense of just being a developer or producer. So, do you think that Roblox is a good starting point foundation for future game developers? Absolutely. I actually don't understand how Roblox doesn't get sued, just because all of the IP that I see in it. My son plays less of it, but yeah, I think anything that allows you to be a creator is a good thing to get involved with, right? So Roblox, Minecraft, there's other game tools that you can get out there, but absolutely, right? Anything that allows you to kind of take control is fantastic, and Roblox being multiplayer actually allows other people to have input. And I understand it. If you've got good content, you can even make a little money that way. Although, just usually the way it works is that people soon discover that building content that a lot of people like is hard, and you'll find a very small number of the content providers are actually making the content that people enjoy. I recommend Roblox with children with some caveats, right? Anytime you have a system with chat or communication, there needs to be some caution in parental controls. So I would say there are some parental controls they have in Roblox. I recommend using those. As age appropriate. People turn into horrible folks on the internet, but as a tool, it's absolutely excellent. So, like anything, use your brain, use common sense. But I do think Roblox, Minecraft, if they're really young is probably a little friendlier. One of the things you can do with Minecraft is that you can run your own servers versus Roblox. So like with my son, we used to run Minecraft servers on Raspberry Pis, right? Which are, I don't have one handy, which are small microcomputers. So he got to learn about provisioning and setting up that technology. So you are saying there are some parental controls. The problem with just the text filters is people find ways around that. They'll do misspellings and synonyms and things like that. As an interesting story, when I was at Xbox and they announced that we were going to have voice chat, a lot of the minorities in Microsoft were like, "This is a disaster," and they were like, "Why?" I said, "Because all we're going to be hearing is like, you can't filter voice, particularly at the time. Now you can, but you can't filter voice the way you can text. Like you can't just do simple bad word filters." So yeah, it was pretty much exactly like you would expect. You get all kinds of horrible experiences on Xbox, and to the point where I typically don't play. I don't enable chat or voice chat for people I don't know, just because I'm playing games for enjoying and unwinding, and I don't want to deal with people being foul. And that's just kind of how I choose to consume titles. If it's, I will note that if the game is cooperative, if it's more of a Destiny or a Left 4 Dead versus an adversarial game, typically the experience is better. because it also tends to skew a little bit older people that are playing cooperative versus just playing pure PvP. Noted that. So I'm right on time. So I always like to leave the last 10 minutes of any presentation. And you guys, if you've been great, you've been asking questions the whole way, but I like to leave the last 10 minutes for any questions that you have, right? So anything goes that I can answer, right? I've been building games since 1997. I've worked on multiple game consoles. I'm working on multiple games now, none of which I could talk about because they're all unannounced. We just had our big Oculus showcase. We have Oculus Quest 3 coming this year, later this year in November. So there's some really exciting things going on in gaming. So I would put it to you guys. Are there any questions? Like what's any questions about how you get into gaming or how do you do this stuff? In fact, I'll just talk about that a little bit and see if I can get anyone's interest. But a lot of times people ask me, "Oh, how do I build games?" Mr. Pryor, like I want to build games. How do I build games? And my answer is just to look at them and say, build games. Because the thing is, there are no barriers to entry for game development. Most, for example, as I deal with kids in Detroit, with the pandemic, every school child in Detroit got a computer, a laptop. It was not the best laptop, but they got a laptop, right? So they have a machine that is capable of building games, right? So what typically happens is that people don't know, well, what are the tools? How do I get started? I'm more than happy to point people to Unity or Construct 3 or Roblox or any of these kind of gaming engines or technologies, and then help them through that. But there's nothing stopping you